Now that we've created a first basic table within our Windows Azure storage account, let's have a look at some of the more customizable options that you can configure when dealing with your table storage. So again, what I've done is accessed my storage account through both the Storage Explorer and through Visual Studio, and we'll see both options basically. So from within the storage account in Storage Explorer, we can go to our test table and we see that we've got a particular entity already created. So we can customize this simply by double clicking on it, or we can just choose the edit option here, either one. So at this point, you can just add in additional values to this particular one if you want to, and just keep on adding in effectively more records. That's perfectly fine. But maybe we want to add another entity. Well, we certainly can do that as well. So what we can do is, let's have a look at doing this from within our Visual Studio this time. So let's go back to Visual Studio over here, and what we're going to do is just double click on our test table and just go into here, and there's a button right there to add in a new entity. So again, we've got the partition key and the row key, which are required, and they're set by default to strings. So in this case, let's create a supplier. Okay, and the row key, again, doesn't really matter what we put in there, but those are the required ones. Note that the timestamp does not display in here in Visual Studio, where actually it does in the Storage Explorer, but it's always there. So let's put in a few additional properties for our new entity. Maybe we want to know where the supplier resides. So we can put some values in there, and maybe we want to know who the contact is. And again, these just can be whatever types of values that we want, because these ones do give us the options to change the data types, wherein the default ones don't. So let's do something again that's just a good candidate for an integer. So now we have our new properties set, and again, we can just continue adding in property after property to whatever requirements you need. So now that we have those values, you see that we've got a bit of a difference here. We've got two partition keys, one for product, one for supplier, different row keys, different timestamps. But note now that we do still have the columns for description, for example, over the supplier field. Now, in this case, since description is not applicable to the supplier, we just leave that value null. So that's perfectly fine. Remember that this is not designed to be relational storage. It's just a table, and it can be for whatever data we require. So now that we have some of these values in here, again, we can use either tool. So if I switch back into here, I probably need to refresh this. Okay, the refresh took a second there. So now we're seeing the changes that were made back in Visual Studio. So there's my product and my supplier in both cases. So now that I have two different records in here, one of the other things that you can do is note that you can query. And it actually gives you the syntax right here, partition key and row key. And you just specify the equals. It also accepts EQ for equals. You can also go back into Visual Studio, and right here, there is a query builder. So it gives you a little bit of an option, a little easier, if you will, to create a query. So we can just click on the button here. Now, one thing to note with the queries, because they require the partition key and the row key, those are the only two columns that are actually indexed. So in fact, those are the only ones that you can search on. There's just not a whole lot of built-in functionality in either tool with respect to querying, but it does give you the basic options to query on either one of those. So I can go in and filter out one of the others. So if I go, for example, to partition key equal to, or I can choose some of these other operators, and I can specify the value, in this case, product. So I should only now see that one value come in here. Click on OK. Then I just have to hit this little green execute option here. There's the syntaxed partition key equals product. So if I just run that, that will filter out. Whoops, something was missed here. Okay, my mistake. It is actually case sensitive, so I just had a lowercase p there, so I changed that to uppercase, and there is our product. So we can go back into our query builder, and we could change that if we wanted to supplier, and hit OK there. Change that and execute again, and then we should see our supplier value. So we can query out the records that we might be looking for, and you can do the same thing in here. So again, we can say partition key equals or EQ, and then specify the value in single quotation marks, and then we can just hit the query, and that will filter those records as well. But always remember that you can only query on the partition key or the row key, at least using these tools.